I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen of Madison Maximize Living. This week we're discussing foot, ankle, knee, and hip pain. Stay tuned to learn why so many people have issues with these joints. We'll be discussing such things as plantar fasciitis, heel spurs, ankle sprains, and orthotics. In the knees, we'll discuss meniscus and ligament injuries, as well as alignment concerns and arthritis. We'll also discuss hip pain and ways to help. You may not know that an extremity-trained chiropractor can help with these conditions. Please stay tuned and find out how we help, coming up next.
And welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. Today we're talking about pain in the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip, kind of your lower half today. So we're talking about an extremity chiropractor. What is that exactly?
Well, chiropractors are traditionally trained, a lot of advanced training on taking care of the neck, the mid-back, the low back. But I'm part of a group on the Council of Extremity Adjusters. It's the International Council that teaches a 100-hour course to chiropractors on how to add adjusting other extremities, the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip, the TMJ, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, the hand, all to that. And it's actually a 100-hour course that I've been a teacher for many years. And we want to change the whole profession so that this is part of your visit to your chiropractor is getting your extremities checked, because they do influence the spine.
Good to know. Now, can you then help, I assume you can, with some of this pain, like plantar fasciitis, foot pain, ankle pain, knee pain, hip pain,
yes.
all that?
Yes, we do, and it really responds quite well from. I've had cases where they walk in on crutches and their ankle is out of place. We set their ankle and they could now bear weight on it right away. To people with plantar fasciitis, that inflammation of the bottom of the foot that was wrecking their life. 20 years of chronic pain. Now that case took like 6 months, but it hasn't recurred now.
But still, I mean, 20 years compared to 6 months, and if only they had known sooner.
Yeah, and it's all natural without drugs and surgery. And that's what's great, because I've seen also people who've had cortisone injections into their plantar fascia, and it actually caused rupture of the tendons on two patients I had.
And I imagine.
And they wore a boot for 2 years then, trying to get the
wow.
tendons to reattach.
Yeah, I was going to say the recovery
if there's
time.
a conservative way to do it, which I think we have, that's, I believe, just a better way to start the whole process.
So let's talk about the foot then. How common is this? How many people out there are suffering from this foot pain?
Just about everybody has foot pain at some time in their life, Stacy, but 1 in 5 people have chronic foot pain. It bothers them every day. What shoes do I wear? I don't want to do that. I'm standing on my feet too long. It bothers them every day. It's really an epidemic condition. Many people, it wrecks their lives. And when you say your feet hurt, your whole body hurts, it's kind of true.
Yeah, and it really impacts the way you live your life, because can I do this? Can I go on this hike? No. Can I, go on this trip? It really would. So I'm looking at Slim here. He's got a lot of bones and joints in his foot, so I would imagine that there's a lot there that can go wrong.
There really is, and it all has a fascinating way of working together. There's 26 bones in the foot. It's quite a fascinating structure. 26 bones, and we have forefoot, midfoot, ankle. And it's a fascinating structure how it all rolls, glides, and slides at proper unison. Well, a lot of people, if they can get an understanding a little bit of how the foot mechanics works, you'll understand how shock absorbed in your feet, knees, hips, and back. So when we step, we first strike on the outside of our heel when our heel strikes the ground in our gait cycle. And then with that rolled out or supinated position, the ankle bones are tight and they're ready to take a shock of hitting the ground. Okay? Now then, as our lower leg starts to come over the foot, we go to what we call foot flat, and that arch starts to flatten. It's supposed to. And then when it flattens, the foot is flexible then, and it can adapt to different levels, different terrains in the ground. And then when we start to toe off, we roll back out to the outside of our foot again to make it a rigid lever for propulsion. And all that happens just in a fraction of a second. And if you have misalignment of the 26 bones in your foot, it doesn't work that well. And it starts to jam or hurt and inflame. So almost every foot condition, over 90% of foot conditions are related to bad mechanics of having the arch roll out, striking the ground, rolling, losing the arch, which is a shock absorber, flattening that arch. Almost every foot condition has to do with that, from plantar fasciitis to those heel spurs where your first steps in the morning are hurt, to metatarsalgia, to hammer toes, and even to bunions.
So there's so much out there. Well, stay tuned as we talk more about how to fix some of these things. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv. And welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. Today we're talking about pain in the foot and ankle and on up. And we're talking about the foot right now. We were talking a little bit about how the foot strikes the ground. I was wondering about some of the pronation. Sometimes you see, especially children, sometimes they're sort of rolled in.
When they're younger, they will have more of that rolled in, and it's called foot pronation, where the ankle bones really don't stack up, they're rolled in. And so there's this collapsing pattern that the ankles are rolled in, and then the tibia rolls inward, and so does the femur turn inwards. So it causes problems in each of these joints. And then with but the good news is for the child, once they enter that propulsive phase of gait, they tend to grow out of that. And so that's something you want to watch and see. If not, then we start adjusting the feet and help them along.
Even as a kid?
Yeah. And even make orthotics for kids, or little supports that help balance that so they strike the ground better.
So what about then running? Is it the same sort of movement that you talked about, just faster, or is it totally different?
Well, in running, you hit the ground you have float time. So that's the only time you actually have time where your feet aren't touching the ground. The faster you run, the longer you float. You're sort of flying. That's right.
You can fly.
You can, just for a split second. But when you strike the ground, then 2 to 3 times your weight is striking on that heel. And you only have half the time to go through this supination, pronation, back to supination. So if there's any fault in the mechanics, it tends to break down the foot very fast, causing heel spurs, plantar fasciitis, bunions, the metatarsalgia.
So you find all of that really fast. So I imagine that speeds up some injuries. What about like ankles? If you just hit something just wrong, you sprain it?
Yeah, with the ankles, it's a real common injury to roll out. 80% of ankle sprains are called inversion sprains, where the inside of your foot inverts, so you're rolling out. That's 80% of sprains, and it stretches ligaments. But by definition, if you stretched a ligament, which is normally meant to retain bones in place, if you stretched a ligament, you took those bones out of place. Many times they're still out of place. So as a chiropractor, we evaluate the ankle and adjust those bones back in place very quickly so the recovery time is much better. And then so many ankle sprains are recurrent. 80% of ankle sprains actually happen again and again.
Because of the existing injury?
It's because it's under-adjusted and it's under-rehabilitated. So we teach things people can do. One of my favorite exercises along the run for the ankles is ankle circles, 25 each way. 25 clockwise, 25 counterclockwise, and 25 point and flex. And it really helps with the strength and strapping in of the ankles. Prevent future injuries.
Oh, good to know. So you can prevent some of that.
Yeah.
So what about sometimes some of the calluses on your feet? Is that pretty normal, or is that sort of telling you
that's a
something's
good question.
wrong?
Yeah, calluses are quite fascinating actually. When we do a foot exam, we look for calluses. A common callus is on the big toe on the inside. So if you're a pronator, you may flare your feet a little bit more, and you're actually pushing off on the inside of your big toe more, and a callus will develop right there. Also, if you have metatarsal arches that are dropped, that's that arch across the foot by the toes. If that's lost, then the metatarsals will strike the ground first, and you'll see on the forefoot calluses developing there. So calluses really tell you where the wear and tear is happening, and it helps us a lot on where we need to adjust. So
people could kind of self-diagnose, like maybe I need to come in and see a chiropractor
yeah,
like
if you have a lot of weird calluses, it's probably good to get checked because you're not walking in good mechanics.
And may save you money on a pedicure down the road too, so who knows?
Don't do pedicures.
They can be dangerous. Another topic. So just really quickly, what about shoe inserts?
Yes, we make orthotics in our office, And they're excellent. We get a high likability rate. They're really lightweight, and we inject them with hot water and hold the foot in what we call neutral. So if your feet are like this and rolling in, we hold your foot in neutral, and then the arch will fill in, the resin will fill in and hold your arch right where it's supposed to be. And then we post it with wedges and metatarsal supports. And so we custom make them for your foot, and they are like heaven.
Wow, and there's so much you can do for it. Now, coming up next, we're going to talk about knee problems. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv. And welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. So now we're going to be talking about knee problems. How common is that?
You know, believe it or not, 1 in 3 people have chronic knee problems.
That's a lot.
When your knees are bad, like your feet too, it affects everything in your life.
What are some of the things that can happen to your knee?
Well, you can get arthritis in your knee, and that can come from misalignment. It comes from bad diet. It comes from injuries. You traumatize a joint, it starts to break down. It can be from a sport where you tore a ligament. Or a meniscus can tear. So there's a number of things. You know, the knee is the largest joint in the body, and it's injured quite frequently. It directly takes forces too from the feet. So when that foot pronates or it isn't working right, that shock goes right up to the knees. Oh. And any torque of the foot goes right up to the knees. So that creates a chronic strain issue often. So if someone does a new sport, they hurt their knees bother them. They do a new exercise, their knees bother them. So getting the mechanics right is really important.
So what causes some of that pain then that they have? They get the injury, and what's sort of happening in there?
Well, there's a couple different misalignments that happen in the knee. I'll pull out our trusty model here. The kneecap actually floats, so when you can get a chronic condition called patellar chondromalacia. Sorry for the long terminology, but it's really a rubbing on the undersurface of the kneecap. And it's called runner's knee as well. And there's a grinding, and people go for a run and their knees hurt the next day. And there's tests we do in a little bit. We'll do a check on you, and we'll check for this.
Okay.
But it's a real common, almost epidemic condition that can be helped. Other problems are the knee itself can move posterior, or it can move medial or lateral in its alignment. And we actually have tests that tell us how it's doing, and then specific adjustments to correct that. And what's really cool about that is those tests get better right away.
Really?
There's better movement, better strength, less tenderness at certain areas right after the adjustment. It's really some phenomenal work.
And that's always so great to hear when you say, oh, things can get better right away, because I think people are bracing themselves for this huge recovery time, and really you can see improvement with these things.
You see improvement very quickly in a lot of people. It does take time to stabilize joints, but it sure heals faster when it's in good alignment. That's the key. If it's never in the right alignment, you're just dealing with more and more and more problems. Like, get good alignment, strengthen just at the right pace with professional help, and you can recover far faster than you realize often.
And let your body heal. So what are some exercises that we can do for the knee?
Well, one of my favorites is one leg standing. Work on your balance.
Okay.
You can also do leg extensions on a machine, leg curls, and you don't even have to have a machine. You could have someone, you could sit on a counter and someone could hold your leg and resist, or you could sit with a bag of frozen peas or something on your foot and do leg extensions. Those are some of the good ones, primarily. Even calf raises are good for the Achilles, the feet, and it's good for the knees because they get a good workout doing calf raise. A squat is a good movement.
Yeah.
And my all-time favorite is walking lunges. I challenge someone to do 1 minute of walking lunges and not feel it the next day. You know, it's really challenging. So best to start with just a few, and only if you have good balance. But to build that is awesome. That's a great knee strengthener. And if you can't go all the way down, don't go all the way down until you can. And
do you necessily need a weight with that, or can you just do body weights?
Well, now you're talking.
Oh, well, yeah.
Add some weights already. Well, yeah, for you, let's add 20 pounds on each side and go for 1 minute.
Yeah, he's joking. But it's true how those exercises, lunges and squats, you always hear are so great for really, I mean, your entire leg.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a
And
good
because it's
time
foot
saver.
balance, like the walking lunge is a balance exercise. It's a cardio exercise. You'll find out when you do them. And it's strengthening. It's good for the butt. It's good for the quads. It's good for balance. So it trains the brain on where your feet are moving.
And yeah, the balance is good for your mind too,
Yep.
as you age. So you really would use a lot of good time using the squats and the
Yeah.
lunges. Well, stay tuned. We have more coming up right after this. Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv. And welcome back to Maximize Living with Dr. Patrick Andersen. So we're talking a little bit about the pain in kind of your lower half. We're up to the hip. So what happens with the hip here when people are getting pain there?
Yeah, it's a pretty common problem. About 1 in 3 people get hip pain. It's actually the ball and socket will rotate. So the femur, the long bone, can actually primarily internally rotate, and it'll cause weakness. The person won't stand on that leg very long, and there'll be certain muscle tests that are weak and limited ranges of motion. But it all was part of the kinetic chain. So as the foot pronates, the knee turns in, the femur turns in, and the whole shock absorption then for the back is affected, and that can cause and lead to chronic back pain.
So it's just really all the way up.
The
If
whole
you've got a
kinetic
problem
chain.
with your foot, you could be
all the way up. Yeah.
suffering. Well, can you check me for some of
I
these
would
things
love
that
to.
we've been
Go ahead
talking
and stand
about?
up.
Okay.
And face that way, please.
All right.
And so when we do an examination, the first thing we do is we look at the feet to see if their Achilles are straight, and you'll see some increased bowing of Stacy's right Achilles. You'll see where it bows in a little bit, and we look for a shelf here. We don't really see a shelf, but a little bit more of it's present on this side. And so she does have some pronation, but don't feel bad. About half people have some level of pronation. But it does affect mechanics, does make your feet work harder, and gradually causes problems.
I'll also be interested to see further on up if you see
Exactly.
that.
So the ideal position here is to have your ankle more in that position.
Okay.
So between adjustments and orthotics to support that foot, you just function much better. If you stay on your feet longer, your feet aren't as tired at the end of the day because you're really using them more properly. So that's the start. We also look to see if there's any bowing in the knees, either inward or outward, and we check pelvic height, any foot flares that are abnormal. That would be the summary of a postural exam. If you'd lie on your back for me now. Now I'll do a foot, knee, and hip exam.
Okay, we get the
all
whole
at the
thing
same
here.
time on you.
This is good.
So we'll scoot you down just a little bit.
Okay.
And so when we examine the foot, we're looking for calluses, we're looking for something like hammer toes where the toes would pull back, we're looking for anything like a bunion. We're checking the range of motion of each of the joints to see if they're fixated or hypermobile. Either one of them is a problem. There's certain muscle tests that are quite fascinating. If you turn your foot down and in and hold it right there, I'm going to test your strength and ability to hold. And that was good.
Good news.
That will tell me if there's a problem in your midfoot. If there's a subluxation or misalignment, it'll be weak there. And we can do shear stressing in here, like that. Other tests, for testing the knee, we do a drawer sign, like this, seeing if there's abnormal play. We can do a meniscus test where we come up like this and cram that meniscus a little bit on either side. If there's a problem, that would hurt. There's testing of ligaments to see if they're strong on the sides, stable on the sides. Another helpful test is to turn the foot in and resist. That will tell us if there's any medial or lateral displacement of the joint, if the knee has gone medial or lateral, the tibia. And then also palpating along, we call it the eye of the knee, 2 little soft spots, and that can be tender in certain spots. You got a little bit one right there.
A little bit there. Is that coming all the way up from that foot?
Most likely, yeah.
Wow.
Some torque from the foot is going up right there to the knee. And then if we want to evaluate the hip, we'll be testing strength here. Hold as hard as you can, and hold as hard as you can. This will often be weak if there's any rotation of the femur at the ball and socket. Other tests include crossing a leg and laying that down like that to see if there's good range of motion, and crossing like this to see if there's good range of motion. And then there are specific adjustments that we do for each of those. One of the other tests that's really important is a dorsiflexion test, where we pull the feet back. And if there's an ankle sprain going on, often the foot won't dorsiflex very well. So that summarizes our foot, ankle, and knee exam. Thanks for watching.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv.
Thank you for watching our show on the foot, ankle, knee, and hip. The world really doesn't know that the same laws and principles that a chiropractor uses to help the spine and health also apply to the extremities. Please spread the word on this and tell your friends. It's really exciting work to help someone naturally without drugs and surgery. For a no-obligation checkup, call 608-833-1282. Let's see if we can help you. For Maximize Living, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen. Until next time, live well and God bless.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv.